Hey friends, how are you? It's 9:02. I don't know why I always say the time. And I haven't done an IG live for a while, but given the news of what happened with Governor Cuomo, I thought it would be really interesting to get Alessandra Biaggi to weigh in. She's a Democratic New York State Senator in the 34th District, representing Bronx and Westchester. And we just asked her to pop in. Hi, Jarrett, Keller. We asked her to pop in and kind of give us her reaction and what she's hearing from her constituents. Hi, everybody. And if you all have any questions that you want to ask, we solicited some from social media. We'll be glad to try to get them in. And if you have any comments about that Governor Cuomo is resigning in 14 days, feel free to weigh in on the comments. Hey, Senator, how are you?
Hi, Katie. It's so nice to see you. I'm doing okay. I'm trying to get my light to be sufficient. I don't know if it is. I'm not in my own home tonight, but I'm making it work. We're making it work.
Great. My little ring light broke, so I'm making as this is my ring light. But what are you going to do? And thanks so much for joining us. We're not going to do a long, drawn out thing, but I really thought about you as soon as I heard the announcement late this morning that Andrew Cuomo was resigning. And I'm curious what your immediate reaction was when you heard the news, because certainly the press conference didn't appear to be one in which he was announcing his resignation. It came as a bit of a surprise, I think, to people in terms of how it was framed. So what did you think when you heard that?
I mean, I was shocked because it didn't, to the point that you just made, it didn't seem like that is what he was announcing at all, especially because it was preceded by his attorney, who was really talking a lot about his defense and also the fact that, you know, these allegations were not real or true. And so it was confusing and also shocking. And I think that as the day has kind of worn on and time has kind of gone forward here, I think it's made me feel two very real emotions. The first is that this is obviously a very serious thing for a governor to do. It's not something that is small or should be taken lightly. This is incredibly serious. And I think that the Attorney General's report that was released last week with regard to the investigation around sexual harassment and assault in the executive chamber, as well as the workplace environment, and the conclusions that, yes, the governor did sexually harass these 11 women in addition to violating state and federal law, definitely are serious enough and have really merited his resignation. However, I think that, again, just thinking more about it, there was no moment in the press conference where there was an accounting for the behavior. There was another moment where he talked about culture and generation and how these are things that really are lost, I guess, on those 11 women, which I can say personally, I'm not speaking for anybody else, I think really was not right. And part of the reason why I think that what he was saying was not right or accurate or true is because he talks about boundaries and how he didn't realize that the boundaries had moved. And when we think about those boundaries, I'm very much brought to 2019 when we passed the strongest sexual harassment laws in the country. It was a bill that I wrote. It was a bill that he signed and that he championed. And so he knew the boundaries. And so I didn't find it believable. And I think that that's a very unfortunate thing. At the same time, this is an opportunity for New York now to be able to move forward beyond what we have all lived through now for almost 18 months with regard to, it's not just this report, right? It's with regard to COVID and the response to COVID in that administration. It's 11 women coming forward, in addition to a whole bunch of other things. And I think that the time now is for us to be able to actually do the work without distraction, because there has been a tremendous amount of time and energy focused on this governor and the scandals that surround him.
You were surprised. Before I ask you more about the resignation, I mean, how did you feel about the AG report? It's interesting because I think the reaction is quite mixed from the people who are watching this. There are a number of people who say they're sad as New Yorkers that he is leaving.
Yes.
And, you know, I think the AG report in its specificity and sort of how hard it came down on Andrew Cuomo surprised a lot of people. Were you surprised when you read the report and initially heard about it?
So I was not surprised when I read the report, but I do want to acknowledge what you just said because I think it's important to do that, which is that there's mixed feelings about the governor leaving, and also people who say, I'm glad that he's leaving, and people who are saying, I'm very upset and sad. This is a very sad day for New York. So I want to just pause there for a moment because it is a sad day for New York. It's a very sad day for New York. And it's, again, this is a very serious report and set of findings. It's a very serious action taken by this governor. And the reason that we're in this position and moment is because of the behavior and the actions of our governor. And that might be a difficult thing to hear, and it might be something that you don't want to accept as truth. And I understand. I can absolutely understand that. And also, I think that the Attorney General's report, when I read it, I wasn't shocked in the sense that the things that were found, right, violating state and federal law, sexual harassment, retaliation amongst not only himself, but also those who work in the executive chamber. Those are things that we have heard about for a long time. And as a former staffer in the executive chamber, it's something that I lived through. I understand it. It's an experience that I worked in. And so I understand, and I knew that that was already true because I lived it. However, I think the most important part of it was that the women who came forward were found to be telling the truth. That is a significant and important finding. And also, it's important because sexual harassment is something that is oftentimes brushed aside or swept away in Albany. It's something that has been hidden. It's something that you don't talk about. And this is a moment where we're saying, no, this is something that's risen to the surface. There's clear facts, corroborating evidence. These 11 women who have given their testimony, it's not just their testimony, it's corroborating evidence. It's 70,000 pages of documents. It's 200 interviews. It's 41 of those interviews under oath, and a whole bunch of other evidence in the appendices of the report that just show the thoroughness that these investigators engaged in. And so I feel a confidence in the process. And I also want to just remind everybody that this is a process and an investigation that Governor Cuomo requested himself. He asked for this to happen. And as time came closer to the close of the investigation is when we saw that he not only started to shift his narrative from I'm going to be vindicated, but he started to shift his narrative to this is a political hit job.
Yeah.
It's challenging on every level. So,
Senator Biaggi, someone just asked in the comments what I was going to ask. If you sort of witnessed this and maybe, I don't know if you personally experienced harassment when you were part of this world. I mean, maybe that's the first question. And the second question is, if so, even if you witnessed it, why didn't you come forward earlier?
So there's two things I'll share with you. The first one is that in that office, the culture of the executive chamber is one where if you speak up or speak out, there is inevitable retaliation. There is it's not an unspoken, it is a spoken theme, which is that if you cross Andrew Cuomo or if you do something that betrays the governor's office or the governor, then good luck to your career. You will never have a job in politics again. And I can say that just from being there in the short period of time that I was, and then leaving and running for office and having consistent calls from that office trying to get me not to run, asking me to not run, and then telling me that I would never have a job in government again, that why was I doing this, and who did I think I was, and like what was I thinking? That was just my experience amongst other things that I experienced. But even inside the office, people didn't speak up because the culture of fear and the culture of berating people and belittling them was like a whiplash. And so the way it felt was sometimes you would have praise for your work, and then sometimes there would be a sharp reaction and a yelling, and you would feel valueless just at the same time that you felt value. And it was confusing, and it was gaslighting, and it was also something that left people in a constant state of fear. Am I going to lose my job today? Is there something that I've done that's going to put me on a list that's outside of the work that I want to do? Most people go into government and public service to actually do the work. It's one of the most meaningful sets of work that you could want to be part of. And yet, even on the inside, when you talk about the behavior that you experience. There is an inherent, okay, like, keep that quiet, keep that to yourself, don't share that with other people. And it's not clear who to go to, because the way the office is set up is as if everything is to reinforce that Governor Cuomo is the one that we're serving versus the public. It is a workplace like I have never been in before, even in the New York State Senate, where there has historically been harassment, abuse, corruption, misconduct. I know exactly where I have to go if I need to report something. That's not clear in the governor's office. And even if it were, the undercurrent of retaliation prevents people from doing it. And it prevented me from doing it until after I had won my seat and felt like I was in a position where I could speak out and be taken seriously and not be retaliated against. And frankly, that's not necessarily true, because even as I spoke out, I was retaliated against, which is fine because I am in this business. I understand what it's about. But the point is, it is absolutely unacceptable for any person to work in government, in any office, beyond government, and to feel that they are unsafe, or that there is an environment where they're going to be harassed or retaliated against or abused. We have to eradicate it. So I know that was a long answer to your question, but there's so many pieces to it that kind of all weave together to make it clear as to why wouldn't you just report this, or why wouldn't you just say it? It wasn't very clear or easy to do that. It was actually very scary to do that.
Alessandra, I was going to ask you about his defense of his behavior, that he's just a demonstrative person. During that press conference, he showed himself sort of hugging and being affectionate with a lot of people. What was your reaction when you saw that?
His response to the AG's report, and also in today, there was a lot of that same kind of conversation and theme. I mean, here's what I'll say to that. The argument that sexual harassment, excuse me, let me back up. The argument that hugging and kissing is generational and is cultural is something I don't believe. And I'll tell you why. Because a workplace setting is a setting where people, again, do not expect it to be hugged and kissed. And even if you do feel like, well, it is cultural, he just hugged people. Groping is not cultural. Groping is not generational. There are things that this governor has done that go beyond even a reasonable understanding of what a generational or cultural response to somebody might be. In addition to that, there have been it's not just the 11 women. It's the inability to be honest about how many people have died in COVID. It's an inability to be honest about whether or not we're able to get COVID relief out the door, because we have billions of dollars sitting in New York right now. Again, another thing, waiting to go out the door for tenants who are on the verge of becoming evicted. It's our MTA not being able to be fixed or to function because Andy Byford, a man who has traveled the literal planet fixing transportation systems in other countries, was unable to stay in New York and work with the governor because it was too difficult and the environment was not conducive for him to lead. I mean, it goes so beyond the report that we have in front of us and also the other report with the nursing homes. It's about governance. It's about a system created not to serve the people, but to serve one man. And that is not what public service is about at all.
Yeah, wait, sorry. I wanted to ask you about the 14 days time frame, just sort of where we go from here. He's going to resign in 14 days. He still could be impeached, and without impeachment, he could actually run for statewide office again. So what do you see? Can you give us some sense of what will transpire from here to when he resigns? And there are obviously some criminal cases that are underway.
Absolutely, happy to do that. And also, because I'm looking at the comments too, and I should probably put them down. There's one thing I want to just say, which is that the way in which somebody leaves an office and their behavior, whether it is with regard to those 11 women or governing, are all interconnected. And it's important that we at least take a moment to try to understand that. And I will do my best to try to explain that. But as we continue to talk here, but it's important that clearly connected. Okay, so the impeachment process. Yes,
Just sorry to interrupt.
sure.
I did comments because I thought they were disrespectful, honestly, and I appreciate people asking questions or even making respectful comments, but once they start being really nasty and ugly, I just don't want to deal with them. So I
Okay.
turn the go ahead and finish. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I understand and I get it. I understand that people are having a reaction to this and it's not a pleasant one, and I am very sorry for that. Okay, so impeachment. So impeachment is important because, again, resigning is not necessarily accountability, but it's not inevitable that there will be impeachment in the state of New York because the assembly has to agree to continue to go forward. Some of us have called for the continuation of the impeachment proceedings. Why? Because it is very important that this governor be held accountable in a court of law. Yes, there was due process with regard to the AG's report. There was an opportunity to be heard. People were represented by attorneys. And now there is an opportunity for us to be able to not only have a trial in the Senate, which I would be a part of as one of the 63 members, but also to be able to prevent, if we see fit, this governor from running for office again. Because if he is not impeached and we don't go forward, he can run for office in the future again. And I don't believe that he is somebody fit for public service anymore. Now, I'm one person, I'm one voice. I represent 330,000 people, and I try my best to think about what I would want for them every single day. And so that's what's informing my decisions. Other people might disagree, but I think that today there is an overwhelming consensus that this is somebody who has really lost his way, who has abused his power, and is not able to serve today or in the future. But without impeachment, he can run again.
And so that's when someone asked exactly what the grounds for impeachment would be specifically.
So the legal terminology for it, or the legal standard for it, is willful and corrupt misconduct. It is a very broad standard. It is not like in the United States Congress, where you have high crimes and misdemeanors. It's very broad. In New York State as well, our impeachment statute is also very broad. And so we have work to do as a legislature to make that law very clear and to make it as fair as possible. And I want to just note that the last time that we had an impeachment in New York was 1913, which is why this has not been something that was a high priority for the legislature, because it wasn't something that we faced. And so that is the standard. Now, if you look at that standard and just break it down, corrupt misconduct is something that we see inside of the AG's report. So I had believed prior to today, before Governor Cuomo resigned, that we did have enough information and enough evidence in that AG's report that was just released. We also have another AG report that was released earlier this year with regard to nursing homes. And so this is not just about the 11 women, although alone those 11 women and the findings are sufficient. It's about, again, this panoply of information and this entirety of what has gone on here, not only in the past year, but also beyond the past year. And now what's extending into how we recover from COVID effectively and appropriately and sufficiently for the people who are really relying on us to show up for them, so that there isn't any more harm caused or any more suffering.
I'm curious, just two more questions, and I'll
Sure.
let you. So knowing Andrew Cuomo as you do, and being part of that sort of ecosystem, if you will, in Albany, what do you think? I'm sure he consulted many advisors, his lawyers, etc. But what do you think prompted him to make this decision? I mean, this is such a speculative question, but can you imagine sort of how he weighed the pros and cons and why he made this calculation?
Okay, so I have two reasons I believe caused him to resign. One of them both of them are speculation because I don't know for sure, so I want to be very clear about that. One of them I think is more possible. The other one is, if I had to take a cynical slice on what's going on, that is what that would be. So the first one is that I believe he resigned because the assembly was getting very serious with impeachment. Now, if we still move forward with impeachment, that would obviously not be a rational or reasonable understanding of why he resigned. However, I think that because it started to feel real, like we were moving forward, that perhaps he wanted to avoid all of that and make it go away. And why I can say that with confidence is because in his press conference today, he actually had a section of what he said, which was, we don't want to waste state resources and time on an impeachment trial because we have so much to do in New York, which is actually the argument that many of us have been making, because we have a lot to do with regard to COVID relief and COVID recovery that hasn't been able to get done, not necessarily because we haven't wanted it to, but because the governor has been unable to actually follow through on COVID relief and recovery. Okay, so that's one. The second, more cynical reason I could probably come up with, which I've been thinking about a lot today, is that I think that he is trying to make his legacy not about this report, not about him resigning. He is trying to make it so that he appears to the public as if he is the victim and he is innocent and that this was a political attack. And why I can say that and feel some kind of confidence in that, even though it is cynical, and I will admit that right now to you, is because his attorney, Rita Glavin, spent the first 30 minutes of the press conference essentially giving a defense of Andrew Cuomo. So again, I can't say that either of these things are real or true, but I can say I think that the first one is definitely something that is possible. And I think that only time will tell, because if we do move forward with impeachment, I think we might see a very different response from the governor. But I do believe that him resigning is in hopes that we will not move forward with impeachment.
But you believe that you will move forward with impeachment, that he will be impeached, or do you think that people will say, you know, he's resigning, this is a waste of time and resources, and kind of validate the argument his lawyer was making?
I think that first, this is a decision that the assembly is going to have to make very soon and really account for. But I am not confident that we're going to move forward with impeachment. And I think that for me, that's a hard truth to take in, but it's one that I can understand, even though I do believe that we should follow through with this, because again, this is only one part of accountability. It's not the full part of accountability. And I think that having a trial will allow the public at least to have a window into a defense, the case, more evidence, witnesses, but the only time will tell from the assembly.
You don't think the AG report, Alessandra, does that pretty thoroughly?
Oh, Katie, I think the AG report was sufficient on its face and its findings to be able to the next day draft the articles of impeachment. I thought that was sufficient. It was evidence. It was corroborated. It had a ton of appendices and emails and information there to show that the findings of violating federal and state law, retaliation, and toxic workplace were present. I thought that was sufficient to draft the articles and let a trial begin. The assembly has taken a different approach.
You misunderstood what I was saying. I was
please.
Reading the AG report. Isn't that enough for the people of New York to realize that this was bad in all these arenas, and to spend the time and energy and resources where it might distract? And by the way, I'm not advocating either way. I'm just advocate, just so people can kind of really get even a greater account of what transpired, or that, you know, what he did as governor. You know, I'm just saying, isn't the AG report enough evidence on its own and enough for people to understand what was going on?
I think it is sufficient for people to understand what's going on if you read it and you actually go through and see that the findings are substantiated. There's a lot of information to make each conclusion in each specific case. But it's just findings, because the AG's report is not a filing of a claim. It's not a set of sentencing. It's not sending the governor to jail. And just to be very clear, an impeachment trial we don't have the power as a legislature to send a governor or anybody who's impeached to prison or to jail. It is a way that we can, one, remove somebody from office, which clearly we do not need to do now, and
And,
two, make other decisions like preventing
and
someone from being able to run for office in the future, or preventing somebody from receiving information or excuse me, money from a pension. Again, there's a lot of other things that go into an impeachment. It's not just the removal from office.
well, what do you think will be in his future other than dealing with some of these legal issues and potentially, an impeachment?
I mean, what I hope would be in his future is that this is a moment for him where he can start to take accountability for the harm that he's caused and really internalize it and really understand it and really think about how his leadership and his power has frankly harmed a significant number of people. I will say though, because I think it's a very important thing to say, because what it sounds like from me, I'm listening to my own self speak, obviously. What I sound like is that it's all negative, it's all bad. He's terrible inside and out, and nothing that he's done is good. It's not true. There have been things that he has done that are great for New York. The problem is that when you're in a position to serve people, and you're in a position to really put the needs of others first, and you're in a position of power as great and as significant as the governor of any state, but especially a state like New York, your responsibility is to make sure every person around you is safe, every person around you is respected, every person around you is not only given what they need to succeed, but also that the culture you're creating from the top down is one that fosters a workplace that is able to then be put into play to serve people in the highest capacity possible. And that is where he has gone wrong. And so again, I hope that this is a moment of reflection for him, and I hope that it's something that he can learn from, but I'm not sure that it will be. And I think that's part of what's tragic, because I do think that someone with as much power and privilege and opportunity and intelligence as he has and has shown the world to have, it's tragic when it ends this way. It just is. And I think that we have to be honest about that too.
Two more women reportedly contacted the state AG's office after the report was released. Do you know any more about these claims by the additional women yet? And
I don't.
Other people are asking Alessandra or Senator Biaggi.
That's okay. You can call me Alessandra. Please do, actually.
Are asking if he'll face criminal charges. Now, we know that his executive assistant has already filed criminal charges. As far as I know, that's the only individual who has done so. But do you expect others to follow suit?
It's very possible. I know that Lindsay Boylan has filed a civil claim for retaliation, which was one of the findings. After she came forward, there was, and this is in the report, there were many people who came together to try to undermine Lindsay Boylan's claims, which were found to have been true. And so I think that time will tell, but the Albany County DA's office is looking into the criminal charges. The Westchester County DA's office is also looking into some of the incidents that were in the report, because some of the incidents happened in Westchester County. The Manhattan DA's office has also filed a criminal investigation to see what whether or not the findings in the AG report rise to the level of criminal activity sufficient for them to bring a claim against Andrew Cuomo. So there are still pending investigations, in addition to the Eastern District of New York, which is still doing an investigation into part of Andrew Cuomo's handling of nursing homes, but more specifically with regard to misappropriation of state resources in how he wrote his book. So there are so many things that are still pending that we don't know yet. And I think that time will tell all of us, because I do trust these offices to do thorough investigations. I think they take this very seriously. This is a governor of a state as large and as important as New York. Obviously, all states are important, but New York has a different gravity to it. We have a lot more people, 19.5 million. We have a huge budget. We have a lot of responsibility here. And so I think the people who are looking into these claims in law enforcement do take them seriously. And it's very possible that there could be findings of not only unwanted touching, but other instances of misconduct because of the governor and how he not only dealt with his executive assistant, but also the state trooper.
Well, certainly a dramatic fall from grace, for sure. You know, you think about the beginning of COVID and that he was kind of a bright light in terms of how he was communicating with the public in those daily press conferences. And, you know, pretty astounding to see what transpired in just a little over a year and how he went sort of from hero to zero. But Alessandra Biaggi, state senator from New York, thank you for spending some time with me and giving us your insight and your reaction to what happened today, which was I think not totally unexpected, but still pretty shocking nonetheless.
Very shocking. Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me speak. Again, I understand people who feel upset. It's upsetting. This is an upsetting moment. And I hope that we can just take this moment and see it as a moment of opportunity to have our first female governor, Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul, will become the governor of New York. That's a very big deal. And now we need to support her leadership.
Thank you for mentioning that, because I feel the first female governor of New York. And what do you know about her, and what do you see for the future of New York and you know, and beyond her, you know, her filling in now and becoming the interim governor?
Thank you for letting me have an opportunity to say this, because I think this allows us to end also on a positive note, which I think is important in this moment. Kathy Hochul has not only been the lieutenant governor for the past many years now, but she was also a member of Congress. She lost her seat in, I believe it was 2008, I believe, because she voted in favor of the ACA. So this is somebody who clearly does have integrity and has used that integrity to serve the people who put her there. But she's also somebody who is a hard worker. She's somebody who has really put forward her desire and her focus on getting women elected to office and making sure that women are not only in government, but also in other spaces like boardrooms and in not-for-profit organizations. She's focused on getting women into rooms where historically they have been left out. And so I think that she will be a tremendous asset to New York. And it's not only for me, but I am encouraging all of my colleagues to lift her up, because she will need support. It's a big job to be the governor of New York, and the road ahead is one of COVID recovery. It's one to make sure that our budget next year is going to be balanced and also responsible. It's one where we can actually make sure that we are reaching our highest heights and New York is thriving. And I really do think there's opportunity here that we couldn't see before because it was clouded by so many things. I think that she will be a tremendous governor, and we should give her a chance and an opportunity. And obviously, this is a democratic society in a democratic state where the process will play itself out. But the point is, I think that she will do an excellent job, and we have to give her an opportunity to do it.
Well, maybe you can get her to do an interview with me. So
I'm sure that she would love to do an interview with you. I will definitely pass along the message.
I would love to meet her and talk to her and talk about her vision for New York in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate your time. And thanks everyone for watching. And, you know, I'm going to post this on my Instagram. Love to hear your thoughts. And it'll be featured this week in Wake Up Call, my morning newsletter. And you can sign up by going to katiecouric.com. I know Senator Biaggi reads it every morning. She is very excited to get it in the box. I just made that, but hopefully she does read it.
It's true. It's actually very true. Thank you, Katie, so much. Thank you. Be well. Bye-bye. Bye.